I would like to have your assessment of that sector, the state of roads, you know, the state of infrastructural development when it comes to road transport system in Nigeria.
It's still a very, very big challenge, road transportation in Nigeria, as we all know. Commuting on Nigerian roads, it's like a journey to hell, as it were. And this is because the roads are bad, not in good states. And not just about road not in good states, you also have in that public transportation system, especially public buses and the owners, most of them rickety, with a whole lot of challenge for those who commute on them. So generally put together, traveling on the road is not dignifying to a very large extent, except for some interstate travels where you have some people who have invested in that sector. But within the states, it's really very, very pathetic.
Okay, talking about investing in that sector, that is road transportation, we'll find that in some states you can find at least good roads, but in some other states you don't find that. And when you do interstate travel, it's the same thing from one part of the state, or when you're driving from a particular area, it's good, but when you get to the area, it's bad. But investments are made every year at different levels. Why do we still see that the roads are in poor condition majorly across Nigeria?
Well, I think the current Minister of Works, His Excellency David Umahi, has been speaking to the real issues, which is the fact that there's a collusion between the public servants and the contractors, ensuring that investment that are put on the road really do not get the reward. And this is a real challenge, where we build roads and they can't last because of the quality of material that are used in building this road. And this is the same reason why the Honorable Minister was saying that even the contract has been awarded, that they had to review them such that, you see, you build road with asphalt and the quality of asphalt is not good enough, and after 2 years you will still need to start to maintain that road with huge public fund, and that for him is not acceptable. But that is where we have found ourselves, and of course don't forget why this is going on, that the minister himself speaks of the blackmail from both civil servants and the contractors who are deploying and using every means to ensure that the minister is blackmailed and the regime is blackmailed. At a certain point, somebody even said, oh, if we begin to do concrete road, the price of cement will rise from 5,000 to 9,000. And one would not know the parameter in which they are using to measure this. Is it that we cannot expand production if the demand for cement increases? So these are the real issues of the blackmail that you see here, because a lot of people have turned this thing into farms. And that's why you see a particular road will be under construction for years. We cannot forget the East-West Road. You can't forget the road that is connecting Edo and Kogi State, which has been, in, as we speak now, in a state of permanent disrepair. Because over time, works are done on this road, surely jobs are done, and they are not passable. And what this means is that, number one, it increased cost of vehicle maintenance. And this, of course, the owners of transport system of vehicles will need to take it from their client or those who commute on those buses, because the repair is huge. Because roads are not good. You buy a new bus today and then tomorrow the state of that bus becomes something difficult because the roads are not really motorable. And I think this is where, again, we need to speak to ourselves to say, yes, we can continue to build infrastructure, but we should build infrastructure that lasts 10 years, 20 years, before we can be thinking about maintaining. Now, if you build a road today and tomorrow is bad, then of course government come back again. So we are sinking that money in one particular road, and then of course we are not getting value from it. And this is why it's even now becoming difficult for even people to want to commute. People want to travel by road because is almost a nightmare.
You observe the trend now that the most used transport system is road system in Nigeria. In fact, it's overused, while the sectors or the alternatives are being neglected. How did we find ourselves in this situation?
Well, I don't think it's just Nigeria. Road transportation is the major and the oldest form of transportation, so it has been there quite for a very long time. One, because it's cost friendly. Number two, it's also very simple and it's easy for everybody to do. So we have people who want to go by road. The waters may not be connecting everybody, and people cannot afford air transportation. The rail lines are not there that are connecting cities. So it still makes it a major form of transportation as we speak. And I think that is why countries invest hugely on road infrastructure. When you go to other climes, you see the volume of investment on road infrastructure, so that, of course, logistics becomes very simple. Transporting goods from one community to another is made easy. And then, of course, people have access to the market, as it were.
There is the argument that the reason we have traffic congestion on the roads is because of increased car ownership. Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't think it's because there's increased car ownership. I think the real issue is because alternatives are not there, really. Now, if you have alternative routes, you see, you get to some climes and they're saying, take for example in the UAE, a very small enclave, and you see over 1,015,000 cars on the road, but you see the whole network of road, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Infrastructures, roads are getting higher, like skyscrapers. And so this provide alternatives, and this alternative help take away. And you see some road passing through the tunnel, so that you have a lot of alternative where vehicles can pass. And this is where the real issues are. Because like in Nigeria, where you have trunk A roads, which are supposed to be federal roads that are connecting states, but then of course you also have trunk B roads. And these trunk B roads are not well maintained, and these are supposed to be the link roads that connect severally. And this is what states are not doing. And once states can invest in such basic road infrastructure, you see a lot of things happen. Take, for example, when you see Lagos today, you go to the Okpebi Link Road. Now, see, the Lagos government is trying to connect a road between Okpebi to Maryland via the channel. And that road, once it's opened up, you will see that all the traffic you see on Mobalaji Bank Anthony Way will not be there because it will be diverted. Now, this is why people also have been clamoring for the Fort Mainland Bridge in Lagos, for example, that there are people who don't have anything to do in Ikorodu Road at all. They are going straight to the island and they live in Mowe. Now, if you have a road that goes straight from Mowe straight down to Victoria Island and Lekki area, all these traffic you see around this Third Mainland Bridge, around Bega, you won't find them because there's an alternative route that people can pass. Now, take for example the Ekpe road that is connecting Lagos to Ogun State. For people who are traveling from Lekki or traveling from Ajah and they are going toward Ibadan or they are going toward Benin or the east, they don't need to come past the middle of the town. All they need to do, they take off and they look through Ekpe and they are out in Ijebu-Ode. Now, once you have all these access, you decongest the roads within the city and the traffic situation will ease up greatly.
What do you make of this development where, statistics have shown that most of the local roads in Nigeria are of the larger percentage, about 60-something% of the roads in Nigeria are in the local, in the purview of the local government, and some of these earth roads, but they are largely in poor state. What do you make of this development, and what can be done to ensure that maybe power is given to the local government or the state government to take over some of these roads?
Well, I think, again, Lagos is pioneering in this direction. Over the weekend, the Speaker of the House of Lagos State Assembly gave an instruction that they want to see a project done by the local council and the SCDA in every month. So that the resources that is going to this, that because they are not supervised really, And we don't really know or get to see what they are doing, because most of the roads you see, they are made by either state government or federal government. And the local government, or the SCD as it's called in Lagos State, you see they are not having really direct supervision to see whether they're actually impacting the society. If you come to some area, you see where even members of the National Assembly, for example, if you go to Surulere area, you go to Ikeja, one constituency, and you see where the roads are supposed to be internal roads within those local governments are maintained straight by the members of rep in those areas. And you really cannot see what the local government councils are doing themselves. And I think this is not acceptable, and this is not what it should be. As a third tier of government, they are supposed to be responsible for the Great Sea routes, which is the 18 routes that connect street to street and local to local. Now, this is also very important. But another issue that, of course, must also be addressed, especially when you come to Lagos area, is the fact that you also see that there are roads that are supposed to be connected and passing through some places. Because of security issues, you see even estate people put in blockages, so they don't allow for free access. So these are all issues that, of course, the locals should be able to address. That the roads that are constructed by public money, individuals who live in a particular place don't have a right to put gates on those roads. They are public roads made with public money. And so this makes accessibility very difficult, and then commuting within the states become real difficult.
Okay, now you just pointed to the issue of security, but we see more of security challenge play out on interstate travels. Some persons have even boycotted the use of road transportation when they need to connect from one state or the other for fears of what may happen along the road. How can challenges like this be curbed or be mitigated? And we also look at safety of the roads, like during intracity travels or intracity movement. You find motorcycles, tricycles on same roads, or you even find people cycling on a very busy road. How do we make it safe for every road user?
Yeah, but I think that's again something that had to be taken into consideration. And many nations are also trying to do that to see how to create safety on the road. You remember last week we were talking about the UAE, especially in Dubai, where tricycle and cycle lines are being created so that they can accommodate. In France, that's also happening also to ensure that those who are cycling can have their own way. And if you go to Ghana, you also find that you have routes that are tarred. Then, of course, you have pedestrian walkways, and you also have where bicycle can actually ride, not in the middle of the main road. That has not been really affected here in Nigeria. And I think it is important because apart from the fact that we're also looking at public transportation, a lot of people are actually turning to cycling, especially within cities, to also reduce the impact of carbon emission on the climate issues. So if we create those avenues where people can actually drive and ride cycle, number one, it makes them healthier. Number two, it creates for clean air and environment. So this also have to be something that will be of advantage to the state in the longer run. That you are not just easing people access, you're also contributing to reducing the pain that climate change is causing to humanity, especially as we make progress.
What do you make of this development between the Minister of Works and some of these contractors about the use of concrete and versus the use of asphalt? Is looking like if care is not taken, the contractors might have their way with their propaganda and some of these things that they're embarking on. How do you think the federal government can handle this kind of situation?
You see, for me, I think especially in the situation where we find ourselves today, leadership is about courage. And that courage to take very tough decisions and then stand by the decisions. People will not see the immediate results, but in the longer run, they begin to see and find its effectiveness. This is important. You see, because if we have to succumb to blackmail, then of course we are losing national assets. And that's what it is. And of course everybody understands this. Now you don't need to be told. If you drive, for example, from Lagos down to Ibadan, you see that the portion of the road that was concluded 2 years ago, now repairs work are continuing on them. That's not sustainable. So the government must be able to wedge a very strong hammer. Two things is possible. Number one, if they insist they want to do asphalt, then they give the government a 10-year guarantee on the roads. And then, of course, they have to provide an insurance bond to the government that this road we have tied with asphalt, in the next 10 years, there will be no repair work on it. If there is repair on it, we will fix it. And then there will be an insurance bond on it to be submitted to the government, if they feel that is the safer option they want to take. Because you are the contractor, you cannot determine the quality of work that I want. I am the one who is paying, and I should be able to determine and say, this is what is acceptable to us. So I feel really having a concrete road will be better for us in the longer run, because it will be more lasting, and then government will be able to actually spread the development. So you are not doing one job in 10 years. You finish this 1 year, you know that in the next 10 years you are not coming here, you are going to other states, and this connectivity that we are talking about can be really made to be realistic. Otherwise, if you don't want to put that service level agreement and bond on those roads, then of course you blacklist some people.
Let's look at the time of completion. You find that a road project has been awarded, and at the time of it being awarded, maybe it was announced it would take about a year to complete. 1 year has passed, and the road is far from nearing completion. And you even look at the way it's been constructed. It seemed like all through weekends, sometimes there are no work on the road. In the mornings, when the road users want to use that road, that is when the workers mobilize to site. That is when some parts of the road is being blocked with equipment, and there's heavy congestion on the road. Take, for example, the Lekki-Ekpe road. Work has been on that road for quite some time now, and the way it's being constructed, construction starts at one point. You're expecting a progression, but you just find that a part of it has been done. After a while, they go way back to another part. So it's not progressing serially as it should progress. What are your thoughts on situations like that?
Well, I think, again, I will... I just also have to reference what the immediate past governor of Rivers State, His Excellency Nyesom Wike, said to the president some time ago, that the real reason why you have such situation is the current way that contract administrations are done in Nigeria today. And that is why you see this whole lot of failures. Because you see, government is awarding a contract to build a road, and then funds are not available to do the roads. And so you mobilize a contractor with 15%, because this is good for the contractor. And of course, they're supposed to do the preliminaries and come back to you. And then you are not able to give them another sum that is due for work to start. And so you see a whole lot of delays. So this is the real problem. It is in terms of contract awards. And you know, the contractors are the one really benefiting from all this. And this is where the current government really will need to really have to understand the psychology of the corruption that is within that sector. Because what happened is that they give you a contract and you cannot fund it. And so the problem is not from the contractor, the problem is actually from the government. And don't forget that the contractor is the one putting pressure on the government to award the contract, with or without money. So they get a contract. So they get a small mobilization. And so when government is not having enough money to do the road, they keep pressuring government for small money, and government keep putting small money, real money that cannot really do so much. And like Wike said, if you do contract like that, you can't see any road completed. What government should do is that if you want to really construct a road, ensure that the contractor are sufficiently mobilized. Give them 80% of the sum of the road and give them the time limit to finish the road. Otherwise, if you are going to do that, ensure that at the point of signing the contract, you are going to engage the contractors to tell them and say, look, government has no money to do this road. You have to use your money to build this road. And then factor the cost of capital into the contract sum. And then be sure that a certain time period is given for repayment so that it can become consistent, and then they will be able to do their obligation to wherever they get their capital from. Now, if you manage contract like this, you will see rate of completion becoming higher. But what we currently do with this envelope system, well, of course, you give out a contract and the government has no money to fund the contract. The contractor enjoys it because the little one that comes into them, they divert it for some other purposes, really using it for the real major thing that is, because they know that you cannot pay. And if you cannot pay, you cannot hold them accountable. So this is the real problem. And I think government must come clean. It's not about the number of contracts awarded that is important. What is important is the number of contracts that are completed. And so government must aim at completion and not just awarding contract. And you see, the last regime, in the last 10, 20 years, what we've seen, every Wednesday when the government meets, they say, contract has been awarded. And all the citizens are looking up to seeing work on that road, and work is never seen. So this is the real problem. But I also see it's part of the failure within the system, that when we are going to sign out contract, it's either you are getting somebody who has the capacity to deliver, and then the person is actually like giving you a loan to do the job. Otherwise, you have to wait until you have sufficient money to fund your contract before signing any contractor to go on site to work.
All right. Talking about funding, you could recall that in the past, we used to have this issue of tolling, having toll gates, like a kind of partnership between government and private, corporations, whereby they take up the repairs or the construction of some roads and then introduce tolling for them to be able to recoup their investment. Do you think we need to go back to that practice? Perhaps it's going to help funding of road projects.
I think it's something that we need to explore. I made the same reference last week to RTA in Dubai. RTA in Dubai introduced what they call the Salik road. Salik, the Arabic word for clean road. Now, the Salik system is working for the UAE. What they've done in the Salik operation is to say they create one clean road and put a toll on that clean road. What they do, the toll is not the physical toll. There's no physical toll anywhere that can obstruct or give room for people to manipulate. What they've done is that they ensure that every vehicle that applies the road has a certain number and tag on their car, which is connected to an online wallet that is funded by the road user. Now, once you get to where the Salik cameras are, automatically that money is deducted from your wallet. Automatically. For public transport, the riders pay. In other words, the vehicles are metered. So when you get to Salik junction, 40 rands is taken from your wallet automatically, and that will increase the cost you're going to pay the public transport user. Now, if we introduce that kind of system, see, if I'm taking an Uber, when I get to a clean road, where there's a salik. So if the rate that they are collecting per kilometer is 20 naira, it automatically will jump to 25 naira because of the 5 naira, which is the toll. So this collection becomes clean. And what the RTA has been able to do with this is that annually they are collecting close to $800 million. So they have made so much money to build new additional roads. And then they put salik on those roads. What do you think will happen? The income is multiplying to build more roads. Now, if they can do that in the UAE and they succeeded, and you can see the state of infrastructure, even in places that are not currently being occupied, it tells you that it is doable. All that we just need is that we need a leader with courage. We need somebody who will allow people to be able to put money in here and then guarantee that their money will be taken if they sink it into your economy. But if you build toll gates and you are going to put people there and they are cutting tickets, they are printing their own tickets, like we have seen, which was the real reason why we have to demolish the toll gates. Because most of the federal road officers who were on those toll gates had their own tickets, as against what government was selling. And so government really were not getting revenue enough to maintain the road, because the whole idea of the toll was that you have enough revenue that you will use to be able to do those roads. But we collect tolls on those roads and you really cannot see those roads maintained. You see that also happening around the airport area. There's no motor that passes, for example, to international airport that does not pay toll. The whole idea of the toll is to maintain those roads. Now go and look at the level of maintenance on those roads. So this is where we need to see, is it effective? So tagging becomes a simpler way to do it. Technology has made a lot of things simple. And I think we cannot run away from adopting technology for efficiency and for effectiveness in terms of revenue collection and implement application.
Okay, that's on the side of government. For the road users and for the economy in general, what's the link between having quality roads and a developed economy?
There's a whole lot. There's a whole lot. The linkage is, the better your road, the lower the cost of logistics in terms of time taken and what repair is. So if, for example, you're going to commute product from Kaduna to Lagos, for example, and it takes you 3 days to do that, that will be taken on the product. A journey that naturally should be no more than 8 to 10 hours to do. So the cleaner the road, the cleaner or the lower the cost of logistics. Because the person who is charging logistics on whatever thing you are commuting is actually also factoring in the cost of repairs and maintenance on the vehicles. Again, you also look at the cost of diesel, for example, or petrol that will be used on the journey. Take, for example, on the journey that you have to take 20 minutes from Baga to Lagos Island here, or Balende, and you have to spend 3 hours. You can imagine the quantum of fuel you are going to burn on that short distance of not more than 21 kilometers. Now, this increases costs for everybody. And if you are not even commuting on public bus and you are driving your own personal vehicle, the cost of petrol you buy increases, and that reduces your buying power if you are driving to work. So where you would have spent maybe 2 liters, you end up spending 5 liters, 7 liters. That's additional cost to you. So that reduces your ability to be able to buy. And then, of course, you don't have disposable income. So some of the luxury products that are sold in the market, you can't go for them because you're always spending what you have on necessity. So this is a connect. So when we have cleaner road and we are having easy access and movement on the road, people will have more disposable income, and then they will be able to buy luxury items, which of course will translate into more employment, translate into prosperity for the entire society.
All right, as we wrap up, how do we address this issue of poor maintenance? Even if you look at some of these truncated roads, a good reference is the Third Mainland Bridge, full of potholes. So how do we address this issue of poor maintenance? Money is being allocated, and you have agencies like the federal, you have FEMA, and even at state level, you have agencies who are supposed to, ensure that these roads are in good state. So how do we address this issue of poor maintenance?
Yeah, well, again, like I said, I still put it back, like I said earlier on, is also issue of contracting. I'll give you one very funny story. About 5 years ago in the UAE, they gave contractors who build road to maintain it for a certain number of years. Now, you know what the contractors were doing? They went to the radio to announce, if you spot a pothole on this road, call us and you get 100 dirham as a reward for spotting a pothole on our road. Now, what do you think that citizens will be doing?
Looking out for the
They will be hunting for potholes.
Yeah, that will become a full-time job.
Oh yes, so a lot of people are hunting potholes. Now, what does this mean for the contractors? So when you say, oh, there's a pothole in this X road, you come to the office to take 100 dirham, and then the contractor quickly send somebody there in the night and they patch it. So the cost of maintenance reduces for them as contractors, because they know that they don't need to go and visit those places. The citizens are there looking for pothole because it means some revenue for them. So as they are hunting pothole, the cost of maintenance is going down for the contractors. Now, this is how people think. And I think we can also imbibe some of all these things. The real problem is that you can't have FEMA, for example, everywhere on these roads. FEMA can actually put incentive such that even the road users can phone in to FEMA and said, I was traveling on this road, there's a pothole there, go and patch it. But what I cannot also explain is, don't you also think that FEMA need the road to be bad so that we can have more budget for the agency? These are all issues that we will need to address, because morality again come into play in some of all these places, and that is why people allow that roads have to go down deep before we start maintaining, because then of course it becomes an emergency as the public are crying, outcry from the masses. Then of course government are put under pressure. Some of all these things will become an emergency procurement, which of course will lead to some leakages.
Let's just do a kind of reflection. Pre-colonial era and even post-colonial era. I know that a lot of people in your time used train services to connect from one part of the country to the other. What was it like at that time?
Well, I think there were those glowing days of Nigerian Railway Corporations where you actually have this train really working and efficient. And those days, even prior independence, to travel from Lagos to Kaduna, you use the rail. And these were really functional because those infrastructures were built by the colonial masters. And then, of course, the purpose was actually to facilitate movement, both human and goods, from one place to the other. Because, again, it's a cheaper form of transportation. And it was really a glorious time until, of course, bureaucracy entered into NRC, Nigerian Railway Corporation, and the story state is what we have today. Yeah, but, of course, we had a lot of people with idea. We don't also forget the role that Jakande played very exquisitely to see this blue rail we are talking about in Lagos today. The whole idea was Jakande's idea. And he actually had a master plan on how to connect Lagos, for example, to ensure that within the city there were ability to have rails, because there were national rails you had. The state needed to have rails to commute within the city. And that design and contract was given to a French company in those days in his first term in between 1979 in 1983. And incidentally, the coup of Muhammadu Buhari in 1983 stopped that project, even when the state has fully committed the contract sum to the company. And of course, when it was aborted and all the constitution suspended and all the activities were suspended, it was only the French company that benefited because they have received the money and then, of course, made claim on Lagos State because of the breach of contract, which, of course, resulted from the military junta takeover of governance in Nigeria at that time. And so we saw that, of course, that could not happen. And then, of course, the rail became almost like a federal exclusive list project. And even when Bola Tinubu, through Fashola, made effort to see how to also reinvent that, of course, the federal government seems to not to give the right for those things to happen. And this is where, of course, again, 40 Federation has actually affected how this part of transportation system had been affected in our history.
All right, rail system has been largely abandoned over the years. In fact, in recent times, I had cause to visit Jebba Town, where the first train, I saw it was in a sorry state. What do you think is responsible for this neglect over the years?
Well, it's the same thing that has happened to all critical assets of the Federation. Is it the national carrier you talked about, Nigerian Airways? Is it NITEL? Is it NEMPA? See, what has happened to the nose is what has happened to the eyes. You see, when you have a system that is built on very massive corruption by those who run it, then you don't really generate revenue because these things are not supposed to be social service as it were completely because people are paying. But you see a situation where the people who are working are circumventing the system and then sabotaging its operations. That's what you have seen. I remember it was about a year or two ago when the federal government, I think it was one Christmas, and they said it was free for people to travel from Ibadan to Lagos to enjoy the public train as is done elsewhere. And then a lot of commuters started to complain because some people were still selling tickets and nobody knew where those tickets are going. So these are the real issues. So for every investment, you are supposed to be making some money, and that money that you make from it is supposed to be used to actually maintain that infrastructure. Now, once those monies are not coming, and all that government gets is more budget overhead to run the system, you get to that point where government don't have enough resources, which of course is what has happened, that the population is growing and the responsibility of government is increasing, but the revenue is growing at arithmetic progression as against the geometric progressions of a population size and the people who are depending on this kind of service. So here you will not have much money to pump into that sector. But the sector that should have been self-funding had been sabotaged, and of course government had to cater for it. And so when people have those options, you see that there will be neglect, and this is what has happened. And no thanks to also those scavengers who are also be pulling the iron and selling and making the tracks unusable.
Okay, apart from the financial challenge and the challenge of vandalization that rail transportation faces in Nigeria, what other challenge hinders the duplicity of that kind of transportation across Nigeria? We know that there are certain states you can connect to using rail, but it's not widespread in Nigeria.
Yeah, but like I said, it's still boiled down to investment, infrastructure. When you look at the Blue Rail and look at the technology that is involved, people on suit will want to go to use the transport system. So, but when it becomes rickety, and you see the old coaches that we have still been driving, people would not want to get to use it. And this speaks to the investment in the sector. You can see, for example, the major bus owner on the main road. They use their vehicle for a certain number of years, and then they scrap them and give it to people who are less endowed with resource to use as intercommunal, and they bring in new buses. Now, the whole idea of bringing new buses is to ensure that they keep their high-profile customers. Same also will apply to the rail system. If you have good coaches, modern-day built coaches on the track, people want to use it. Many Nigerians travel abroad and they use rail system. So they travel on train, they buy ticket. So this is the issue. But again, connectivity is important. If you go to Paris, you can actually take a train from the airport to wherever destination you are going to. They are connected to, they are linked. Same in the UAE. It's same everywhere you go in the world. The train system is connected to the airport, connected to seaport, and then it's linked up the entire society. And this is why we are hoping that the master plan of this new regime of having a coastal line that will connect Lagos, for example, to Port Harcourt, Warri, through the coastal line, which of course is estimated that people can travel from Port Harcourt to Lagos in 3 hours. If it works, nobody want to be on the road. Everybody want to use the rail system. But investment in that system is critical for it to actually be effective, for it to be sustainable. But it's not one-off investment, because as technology is changing overboard, then of course the nation must be able to ensure that investment in that sector is bringing and yielding returns that we can use in really modernizing the system as technology improves.
So talking about investment, will a public-private partnership work? And what will be the benefits for the private investor?
Oh, it works great. Why wouldn't it work? If it works in another sector, it will work. It's just ticketing. Take, for example, at the commissioning of the Blue Rail the other day, the Lagos government is expecting that maybe over 30,000 people will be commuted on that transport in a month. Now, if you have 30,000 people moving on that track, they are using their ticket. If, as they currently sell at 700, you see, so this can be shared between the state and the private investors, and they will make more huge money out of it if the collection system is foolproof. In other words, people are not able to access the track without their cards. So with the card system giving you access, which means no matter how important that you are able to pay to use the service. You know, somebody told me a story some years ago, and he said the real reason why the Nigerian Airway failed was the fact that some government officials were actually using it to commute their girlfriend to Lagos, from Lagos to London every weekend. I can imagine when a big aircraft is carrying one person or two people to travel on the expense of government, income is not coming. What do you have? So you can't sustain that sector. I think this is the area where, of course, private partnership with government really will be of a great help, ensuring that the revenue does not go through the public, it goes through the private, and the royalty go to the government. Now you will ensure that there will be effectiveness in collection, and then not just effectiveness in collection, but also oversee and supervise to see that this is working without necessarily overstaffing the service. I see this on the, for example, the BRT buses. Sometimes I ask myself, how can this be profitable when you have even somebody employed to help people tap card into the bus? That does not require any technology. Any human being can pick his own card and put it on the machine, and the machine scan it. So why will I need to employ somebody to be helping tagging a card and just to fill a form? These things can be synced into a bigger computing system where you see buses are just driving. Every time I go and I stand at TBS, for example, I'm asking myself, this is market wasting. You see a whole lot of people that are lining up, waiting for buses, and buses are not available. So the problem here has always been that you have plenty demand, and the issue is always supply. And that should not be a problem for a nation. So that if you have a lot of passengers who are coming to wait for your service at a particular time bed, then it should be planned such a way that you can take advantage of those time beds to make profit for the company. But as we see, this seems not to happen. And this is also the problem. When you have the private having a hand and government is not superimpose a subsidy on these services, it will be very, very lucrative for private people to put money. But when government is going to determine how much you are going to collect and how you are going to run, then that will not be an incentive for private participation. And I think that is where we need to really focus on what incentive do we need to create for private investors to actually partners or participate in such a public goods provision.
All right, you are almost leading me to the next question. Talking about incentives, I observed that an average car owner here seems to have this attachment to his vehicle here. So what kind of incentives can be put in place to encourage the use of rail system rather than everybody, driving on roads and the use of car? What kind of structure or what kind of incentives can be put in place to encourage Nigerians to make rail system a priority rather than road?
I don't think, apart from comfort and security, there's so much that needs to be done. People want to be sure that when they are on the track, that there's security. And people are also guaranteed of safety of the equipment. In other words, that they are maintained properly. And then there's some minimal level of comfort in the system. For example, it's properly air conditioned, the seats are clean, the interior, the environment, the ambience is good looking, and then people will use it. That's the incentive that is required. And then, of course, there's also regular. There's also regular. You go to some train station and you see the alarm and tell you in 10 minutes a train will be here. And 10 minutes on the dot you will see the train come. Now this is also very important for commuter, that if I'm going to use the system, will it be reliable for travel? Sometimes you want to move from Lagos Island using the BRT, for example, and to go to the mainland. You have to stay 1 hour on the queue to get a bus to sit or stand. That's it, it's incentive. So if I have my money, I won't go and stay on that queue. So I think the consistency of this system is what will make people to use it. So that if I go to the bus stop from my house, I can program in my head that train arrived this station at 9:05. So it's predictable. So I can leave my house and get to the train station knowing fully well that if I miss the 9:05, I will need to wait for like 30 minutes before the next train will come. So people can plan their timing along the consistency of the rail system. And I think this is all that people will need. So apart from the fact that you are providing security, there's some measure of comfort in the facility, there's safety on it, and then of course the timeliness will be a huge incentive and people will be ready to pay for the service.
Okay, we already know that train services exist to convey passengers from one place to the other, but what about cargo? Are we using the train services that we have now largely for cargo as well?
Yeah, but it's same issues. The connectivity is also a matter. And this is why, of course, you see, like I said, in most places, you see there's a connect between the airport, there's a connect between the seaport. Now, you also have cargo train, just as you have cargo airlines. You have logistic trucks and vehicles that convey goods. So there are some that are built purposely to carry products from one point to another for the distribution. And the whole idea is to see how you can drive down the cost of logistics if people use this facility.
Let's look at the issue of funding, because that's critical. For this infrastructure to be provided, the funds must be available. And you also alluded to the fact that, even regions or at the state level, there should be, connectivity when it comes to rail system. How do we address this issue of lack of funds, especially on the part of state government who actually want to embark on this project? What options are available for them to be able to manage this challenge?
Well, I think, again, one thing that we can also do is mobilizing funds that people who are contiguous can actually pull resources together to grow this infrastructure. Take, for example, you can see Edo, Bayelsa, Delta, Kogi, for example, putting resources together to build a common line that cuts across. And they sit down together and design this program to connect their multiple states. So they pull resources together to build this infrastructure, and everybody taking their toll or getting their revenue from the services. This is possible. So I think, apart from having private people participating, states can actually also invest, because it will be like a source of revenue for them. So it's important. But by and large, there are a lot of funds out there that can be accessed by states when the right investment climate is created by the governing states for such fund to flow in, which for us has been the really big issues in the last 8 years, that a lot of people who put money in the economy had difficulty repatriating their legitimate funds. So if this is a problem, you can't expect another person to come and put money. So once you don't create that ecosystem that will make for investment, inflow of investment, and then outflow or repatriation of profits, you won't see big people play in these critical sectors.
Okay, let's look at protection of the rail assets. You've mentioned earlier how sometimes the rail lines are vandalized. So what can be done to protect it, to ensure that there's security along the rail tracks?
Well, I also see that what other people have done is they have actually done a lot of investment, even in fencing the facilities in some places to prevent access by miscreants. Now, if the service is functional, vandalization will be the least option, except that you have signed a suicide note. The real problem is that the facilities are not functional. This is the real issue. But again, like he said, not just the rail, even including the road transportation. And I think government must also invest in technology that can monitor these services and to see that we are able to use technology to drive security in our system. We don't need to use manpower every time. There's a whole lot we can do with security. With satellite images, you can see what's happening at a very specific places. And then it is easy for you to make scapegoat out of people who are doing those vandalism. And once people know that they are watched, of course, the motivation to crime will reduce. But when the service is not in use, then it is easy for people to vandalize the service.
Let's look at this issue of ticket racketeering, touting at the, when it comes to rail system in Nigeria. You see the issue of ticketing, racketeering is very common. What can be done to ensure that we don't have this kind of practice? When you go to other climes, to civilized nations, you hardly see things like this. How do we stop this practice around here?
Well, again, it's a failure to adopt technology. And I don't think there's anywhere in the world people are still using ticketing. Everybody is using card, bus card, rail card. All that you need to do is to buy a card and then, of course, load your card that gives you access to the facility. So ticketing is also an avenue for creating rent-seeking opportunities, especially for those who do tickets. Now, if you're using electronics to drive the process, then, of course, number one, you reduce the cost of manpower. So the logistics for collection become better. Number two, you also ensure that you get the real value for the services that is rendered. Now, if you are ticketing, the person who is selling the ticket is the one telling you whether there's tickets or no tickets available. And you see this happen even on our local flights, where some certain seats are reserved by the ticketing authorities or officers. May not be known to the airline, may not be known to the managers of the track system. All that they are simply trying to do is that they know that there are people who get crashed on journeys. And so when they come, they can sell those tickets on premium. It's not as if the SS is going to the company or the business. The SS is going into the private pocket of the individual. So when you do this, you create a room for rent seeking. And this is the real issue. And I think that we should be able to get over some of all these things. Take, for example, I load my card, my Cowry card. That's my bus card. Take me from one place to the other. If there is money on my card, as I tap in, then I gain entrance. If there's no money, I sit down. And so people are able to maintain a queue, and there's discipline in terms of the operation of the system. Then you will not be using the public good to make private friends, as is currently being done by the ticketing system. So you go to some certain park in the morning, you want to enter the bus, and they tell you seat number 1 is taken, seat number 2 is taken, seat number 3 is taken. So those prime seat is taken because they are waiting for a passenger who is going to come, and they say, oh, I reserve seat number 2 for you. You give them extra 500, and then they allow you to sit. So these are rent-seeking opportunities, and I think they have to be discouraged.
Now, what is the issue with removing these rent-seeking opportunities? Because it's not like the technology is something that is so fancy or so difficult to come by or even implement. What is the issue?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You see, if a man is benefiting from a system, he continues to perpetuate that system so that he continues to benefit. That's what it is. So if you want to change the system, you get a lot of blackmail, because they are already currently benefiting from that system. So if he's paying somebody's bill, he would not want that system to stop. So that is the challenge we face. So people are benefiting. There are some people, they may not be really collecting these on behalf of the government, but they are benefiting from the system. And there are certainly some people who are also above them that are taking part of this revenue. And these people have the power to actually allow this system to stay. But it's for government to be thinking ahead of this rent seeker, to begin to deploy technology to eliminate these opportunities that create a room for malfeasance and rent seeking, as I've said.
All right, you observe that the federal government is now taking more interest in rail system in Nigeria. A good example is that of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, that of the one that happened in Lagos. Now, how do we attract investors into that system, into that business, into that space, to make it easier for private entities, even foreign partners, to come into that system to invest in that transport system?
Yeah, I think like every other investment, whether it's in industry, whether it's in service delivery, require for you to create a system, an ecosystem that allow that things are done smoothly and the investor is able to actually take in or take out whatever profit that they make in the system. And that ecosystem is what we are speaking to. And this, of course, have to speak to a lot of issues. You look at the regulatory authorities, you look at the challenge of getting to enter into your country, you're going to look at the security of funds within the system, you're going to look at the political stability within the system. Because when you have political instability, and of course people have investment and they are not sure of what is going to happen to that investment, nobody wants to put money in there. I just gave you the example this morning of Jack Conde trying to create the Blu-ray system in Lagos State. The contract was awarded. The company was mobilized to start operation. And on the eve of starting that process, the coup was announced by General Muhammadu Buhari and today Idiapo. And so all the state system, structure, were put on hold. Now, this makes it difficult for somebody who wants to put money into an investment because here constitution is suspended. So litigation becomes difficult under a military regime. So this is the problem. Now, even as we see that our president is going abroad shopping for investors, everybody is looking at the climate at home. Now, when you look at the toxicity in our political environment as we speak, it's not conducive for a man to bring in money where you are even having people, because of their political interest or failures, are even clamoring for military regime. And no thanks to the fact that you have in Niger Republic, in Burkina Faso, in Mali, that military coup has happened. So people are also afraid and say, if there's so much instability in the system, how safe and secure will my investment be? Because such investment is not something that you can plant today and reap tomorrow. You have to put investment, and of course the gestation period has to be between 20 to 30 years to be able to recoup your investment. Now, if you are not sure of stability in terms of your politics, in terms of government policies and regulation, it will be difficult for you to have people put money on that system. So stability is important. Security is quite important. And this is what the government need to do to ensure that the ground is smooth and level for foreign direct investment to actually come into the system.